an hour.
Yes.
And nobody behind her, I guess, wanted to drive 4 miles an hour.
Yes.
And she's just screaming out the window, Glenn!
Right.
You know, and don't fucking ignore me, and
Yes.
fucking you hate me.
Yes.
Blah, blah.
Right.
And he's just happily going up the road listening to Duran Duran or some shit, right?
Right.
And she actually drove her car through an intersection right into another car very slowly. Because, of course, when the car in the opposite, at the intersection there, the car that was coming sideways there, they slowed right down to stop, and then she just ground into them at 4 miles an hour.
Right.
And she pushed them for 2 blocks. Right? Completely oblivious to the fact that she's slow motion T-boned this family.
Right.
And now she's pushing them sideways up a road for 2 more blocks.
Right.
All the while screaming at Glenn.
Yes.
Who was pretty much oblivious to it.
Right.
But we saw this.
Right.
So, yeah, there you go. That's how we know Glenn's mom's nuts.
Yes.
Right.
So anyway, he walks up, he parks his Norton Commando in front of the van in the driveway there, and Juanita's playing with the dog.
Yes.
Patrick's staring at her ass.
Yes.
Right.
And Clay is in feeding the other 2 dogs. He had 3 Siberian Huskies, right?
Right.
So Glenn walks up now, and this all happened so fast.
Right.
He walks up around to the passenger side. Now I'm sitting in the passenger side of the van. I had just cleaned the gun.
Yes.
And just was polishing it up with the towel there. Just it's all ready to go, right? This asshole
Right.
walks right up to me with this big smile on his face.
Yes.
He always had this big shit-eating grin on his face, right?
Yes.
And he's got these sunglasses on.
Yes.
Now this was the time, just around the time when Terminator 2 came out, I guess, or after Terminator 2 came out. It's like late 80s, early 90s, somewhere. I can't remember the actual date. Sue me.
Right.
So he walks up to me with this big dumb grin on his face, and he grabs the gun out of my hand.
Yes.
Stuffs it down his pants. Fires the gun.
Right.
And like this was all just instantaneous. He just grabbed it, stuffed it down his pants, and pulled the trigger. Pop. Right?
Right.
Still with the big shit-eating grin on his face, he hands it back to me.
Yes.
Now, the look on my face is one of sheer shock, terror, and complete befuddlement.
Right.
Right? And the only thing I could think in my head at that second, at that particular time, was he must have missed.
Yes.
Right.
Right? I'm thinking, okay, so the pellet went sailing out of the barrel of the gun, which really had to be nose to nose with his dickhead, right?
Right.
Somehow he missed, and it went down his pant leg and just bounced off the ground.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Because he hands me back the gun, and I'm holding the gun, and I'm looking at it.
Yes.
And I'm looking up at him, and he's still fucking smiling.
Yes.
Right.
And then the face changed.
Right.
And he still had the sunglasses on, so I couldn't really see his eyes.
Yes.
But his mouth was slowly dropping down from a smile to, what the fuck?
Right.
And I shit you not, dude, I looked down at his pants, and this red stain just came out. Hey?
Right.
And he looked down, I'm not kidding.
Yes.
Right.
He started to bounce up and down a little bit, right?
Right.
And he actually said, oh, mommy, right?
Right.
And he just goes tearing off down past the back of the van.
Yes.
He goes down to the side door at Clay's place. He runs up the stairs.
Yes.
Right? He runs right past Clay through the kitchen and goes right into the bathroom.
Yes.
And Patrick and Juanita and I are just staring at each other
Yes.
like,
Right.
what the fuck? Because, of course, Patrick and Juanita saw this, right? And they're looking at me, I think, with the same face I was looking at them with.
Right.
Right? So I get out of the van, and I'm slowly sort of walking up to the side door of Clay's place.
Yes.
And I get up on the little porch there, and I go in, and Clay's in the kitchen at the frying pan with ground beef for the dogs.
Yes.
Right? You know,
Right.
nothing new there. He's looking up at me, and he's like, "What?" And of course, Patrick and Juanita came in behind me, I guess, right then with the same look on their face. Right. And he's like, "What's wrong?"
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the four of us could hear it.
Yes.
We start hearing this noise coming from the bathroom. Oh, mommy! Oh, mommy! Oh, mommy! Oh, mommy!
Right.
Right? And Clay's like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
So I quickly explained to him. I'm like, you know, I was just cleaning the gun, right?
Yes.
And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, Glenn just grabbed it and shoved it down his pants and pulled the trigger."
Right.
Right? And then Clay's face turned to our face,
Right.
and we were all looking the same.
Right.
So now the bathroom door was around the corner out of the kitchen and down the hall.
Yes.
And the door was still open.
Yes.
And we're like, "What the fuck?"
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So the four of us slowly moved down the hallway, really kind of not wanting to see what's in the bathroom. And yeah. We get around the corner, and we look into the bathroom. There's Glenn standing there, still with his sunglasses on.
Right.
Pants and underwear around his ankles.
Right.
Bleeding into the toilet.
Right.
And when like a stream of blood, like it,
Right.
you know, it was literally like he was just peeing blood straight into the toilet. And Clay goes in and goes around the side of him. It's like, "What the fuck did you do?"
Right.
Right? And Glenn was just kind of out of it at that point. He was just, "Oh, mommy, oh, mommy, oh, mommy,
Yes.
oh, mommy."
Right.
Right? And meanwhile, me and Patrick and Juanita, I don't know what happened. Like
Yes.
the faces of sheer horror that we had to that point.
Yes.
There was just something about seeing him and the stream of blood coming from his penis
Right.
into the toilet while he was bouncing up and down saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy."
Right.
It was our faces just turned from that total shock and horror
Yes.
into uncontrollable laughing.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. So and I mean, God, by the time we got to the hospital with him,
Yes.
you know, we thought we were gonna have to check in too.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So Clay yells to me. He's like, "Go start up the van and warm it up." And I'm like, "Okay." And the three of us, you know, come spilling out of the side of Clay's house. They're just laughing our fucking asses off.
Right.
Right. And so me and Pat, we get in the driver and passenger seats there,
Yes.
and I fire up the van, and it's warming up and stuff. And Juanita was just about to go home and stuff, so she's out the side of the van there
Yes.
on the passenger side. She's ready to go, but she's just laughing her ass off.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So finally, you know, Clay gives Glenn, I guess, a couple of towels, and they jam it in between his legs, and so he kind of drags him out and pops him in the back of the van,
right?
And off we go to the hospital. So we get up to the hospital,
Yes.
and Clay takes him in, and
Yes.
I go and park the van, and Patrick and I, head up to the emergency entrance there, and
Yes.
go hook up with Clay in the waiting room.
Yes.
So Clay's in the waiting room now. This is back in like late 80s, early 90s,
Yes.
right? So they actually had pay phones back then.
Right.
So in the waiting room, there's a pay phone hanging on the wall.
Yes.
And so Clay's sitting in there near the pay phone, and
Yes.
Pat and I go in there and we sit down, and we just all start laughing.
Yes.
Right.
And then, of course, the other people in the waiting room, there's about 20 other people in there.
Yes.
This is back when, medical situations were serious and emergency rooms did get full, right? COVID? Yeah.
Right.
And so we end up recounting this story to most of the people in the waiting room there, because of course Clay's got to phone Glenn's mother.
Yes.
Yeah, the crazy one.
Right.
He's got to phone her and explain to her exactly what's happened.
Yes.
And try and convince this psycho nut job to come to the hospital.
Right.
And of course, this is where the rest of the waiting room hears the story.
Yes.
Because Clay's explaining it to Glenn's mom.
Yes.
Right.
And of course, it's kind of hard when you've got this psychotic, paranoid woman on the phone.
Yes.
That already doesn't like you and doesn't believe anything you say.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And then you're in a room with 20 other people that have not heard the story about why you're there.
Right.
Until Clay explains it to Glenn's mom.
Yes.
Right.
And of course, when he delivers the punchline, the whole room erupts in laughter, right?
Right.
And she wouldn't believe him.
Right.
And she hung up on him, and he said that she's not coming.
Yes.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, Glenn in the operating treatment room there,
Yes.
right? He's in there, and the doctors are like, okay, well, we need, parental sign-offs because we have to call in a neurologist and a couple of specialists, right? And they couldn't do it.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Yes.
No, they couldn't do it because they didn't have the money. And Clay's like, well, I can, I guess you could call me a caregiver, I guess,
Right.
we're friends. He works for me, yada, yada, yada. I can sign off with whatever you need. And they're like, well, no, you can't.
Yes.
It's a legal thing. We can't treat him without parental authorization,
Yes.
right?
No.
So here's Glenn still bleeding. Now, they managed to control the bleeding.
Yes.
And they drugged the shit out of him.
Yes.
Right.
And they put him in a wheelchair, and because they needed the room, they weren't going to keep him in there,
Yes.
right? So they put him in a wheelchair and covered him up with his towels and whatnot, and put a sheet over him because his pants were off at this point, right?
Yes.
Right.
So here, see if you can picture this now. He's wheeled out in a wheelchair. He's sitting in the waiting room with the rest of us.
Yes.
Everybody in the waiting room knows what's happened.
Yes.
Right.
And here's this guy, and he's sitting in a wheelchair, and he's got a sheet over him and a big red spot where his crotch is supposed to be. Right?
Right.
Oh. Man, it was absolutely hilarious, and
Right.
and there was nothing we could do but wait.
Yes.
So we were there for like 3 or 4 hours.
Yes.
Right.
And then the psycho mother finally shows up.
Right.
Right? Now you'd think under normal circumstances,
Yes.
she's going to be, her number one concern would be her son.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what you'd think. No, her number one concern was killing Clay.
Right.
So she comes into the waiting room.